Previously on Dan Introduces pretty basic knowledge about Europe to other North Americans who don't know a lot about Europe, we talked about living in France, living in Spain, Portugal, and Italy, and living in Germany. And in today's episode, we're going to discuss some of the most interesting regions of Europe, including the Baltics, which is Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, and the Balkans, which includes a ton of countries, including Croatia, Albania, Montenegro, Macedonia, and Bulgaria, and a few others. Stay tuned. So there's two more regions I'm going to cover here that encompass over 10 countries. But before I do, I want to touch on something, and that is the actual experience of living in each of these countries. And in order to get a better understanding of that, I would encourage you to check out another video I filmed on 3 differences and 3 things about living in Europe. And this is fairly similar among all European countries. I'm also going to link to one of my favorite channels called Geography Now and some of their videos that go in depth on each of these European countries. And that way you can go deeper. Their video on the Czech Republic covered stuff that it took me a year to figure out about the country living here. So they do really good videos on what the country is actually like, some statistics and what the people are like and all this sort of stuff. So my goal here is to give you the broad overview so you can start to think about some countries that maybe weren't on your radar and have some more options for where you might want to live, but not to go in depth with every country or we would be here all day. And also you'd figure out for some of them, I don't know what I'm talking about. The last thing I'll say about this is that most of the stereotypes for Europe are true. I get it, stereotypes are bad, blah, blah, blah. But if you're trying to think of what it's like to live in Italy, it's like the stereotype. If you're trying to think of what it's like to be in Germany, it's a stereotype. Bread, hard bread, beer, people who follow the rules. This is kind of it. Spain is a stereotype. European stereotypes have never been proven false to me. I've never been in a situation where I've went to a European country and been like, oh, this is nothing like the movies or what people say it is. They're all the stereotypes. So that should also give you a good sense of it. Not all the stereotypes might be true. I actually found French people to be very nice, although I went there after the Paris attacks and apparently after 9/11, New Yorkers were really nice where otherwise they weren't. So who knows? But generally the stereotypes of European countries are true. So if you're wondering what a country's like, watch some movies about it, watch some shows about it, and that's actually going to give you a pretty good insight into day-to-day life there. So the next group of countries I'll talk about is in the Baltic area. This is Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. These 3 countries are quite small, very blonde, and don't quite get Scandinavian cold in the winter, but they're pretty damn close. All 3 of these countries have some issues with their population being split with the Russians. They were former Soviet countries, and during the Cold War period, the Soviets sent a lot of Russians there, primarily as a punishment to work in the ports and things like that. The problem is most of these Russians were not exactly the most educated of sorts. This now leads to a problem because when the Soviet war ended, the Estonians, the Latvians, the Lithuanians, they weren't exactly keen on giving these Russians passports or citizenship because they were the people sent there by their persecutors. And they are not Estonian or Latvian. So they don't have a local passport. So you have someone in Estonia who doesn't have an Estonian passport, but has lived there for 30 years. And they don't have a Russian passport either. So you have this weird situation where upwards of 30–40% of the population, in some cities it's 80 or 90%, is of this Russian origin, very uneducated. Most of them don't speak the local language, so they're getting beamed with Russian propaganda, like insane amounts of Russian propaganda. They believe it all, and this is very threatening. So if you've seen in the news things about NATO, about setting up more troops in Estonia, running drills, this is why, because Russia's in a situation where there's a bunch of things they could do to basically overthrow the population through the Russians who already live there, do a bunch of weird stuff. So that's one interesting fact about this region. As I said, they are also very blonde and they also love to drink. I believe Estonians drink more hard alcohol per capita than anywhere in the world, and also a significant amount of beer as well, so they don't slack off in that area. Estonia is uniquely a very innovative country. When the Soviets left, they elected a very young government who got rid of a lot of bureaucracy. And now Estonia is a country, you may have heard about e-residency. If you're a digital nomad, I'm sure you have, where anyone in the world can basically get a bank account set up there and open a business quite easily. It isn't actually as innovative as it sounds, but they've set it up so their citizens can vote, can sign contracts, can do all this online. So it's a very impressive country. I was in Estonia last year and I was very impressed. The level of English is really high. I haven't been to Lithuania, but Latvia as well, really high levels of English. Friendly people, not a lot of foreigners, but enough that they're kind of open to it. But not so many that they're like, piss off tourists. Like in Prague, they don't want any more foreigners at this point. But yeah, I was very impressed by Estonia. And if I was looking for somewhere new to live in sort of the spring, summer, I definitely consider their capital, Tallinn. It was a smaller city than Prague, but like beautiful old buildings. Again, amazing level of English, nice people, and like my Uber was a Tesla. So a lot of like people doing well and innovation and all this stuff there. So generally this part of the world doesn't get a lot of attention. The winters don't help them, but there's a lot of interesting things going on there, I guess, if you were to live there. And if you are doing well in business, so you're a digital nomad on the end that I would call location independent, which is what we should all strive to be, where you're earning a very good income, there are some serious tax benefits in this area of the world and worth looking at these countries as well. The last area I'm going to cover here is the Balkans. I'm going to skip out on like Ukraine and Russia because I don't have a lot of experience there. The visa situation's weird. If you're from North America, probably not an amazing time to go live there unless you're one of those weirdo travelers who likes to go to the strangest place because people think it's weird and it gives you attention. But if you're a normal person, they probably don't make a ton of sense right now, depending on if you're trying to actually establish like residency and spend a lot of time somewhere. So the Balkans are made up of a lot of all of the former Yugoslavia, so like Croatia, Serbia, but also would include Albania, Montenegro, Macedonia, and Bulgaria, and maybe a few other countries. We can group Romania in there, although I don't think they're really included, but let's group them in. I've traveled through most of these countries. I was recently actually in Bulgaria and Macedonia. There's a lot of natural beauty in this part of Europe, whether you're on the coast of like Croatia or Albania and you have just a beautiful ocean. Croatia in particular has just gorgeous views. It's a beautiful place. Or the mountains, like some of the drives I did through Montenegro, it's incredible. So a lot of natural beauty. The people are very friendly. They're definitely people who prioritize social over making money, at least in the people I've met. So that's not, maybe because of the economic opportunity there isn't great, but there's a leaning towards enjoying life, similar to maybe the Italians or the Spanish. There's an interesting, I guess, mix in these countries because a lot of them did go through the war in the 90s. And so you have places that were kind of on par with Western Europe, doing really well. Sarajevo, for instance, was going to host did host the Winter Olympics right before the war. So you had countries that were doing very well and then have basically been destroyed and set back. Some have improved more than others. Some of the main cities there that you'd want to check out would be like Belgrade in Serbia is a cool city. I actually considered moving there instead of Prague, although Prague is better. And you'd have Croatia. I'd probably live in Split or Zadar on the coast is somewhere to look at. Montenegro is an interesting place. And then if you go like Macedonia, super cheap. All of the Balkans are going to be cheap relative to Europe. But places like Bulgaria, Macedonia was probably the cheapest I went to. Albania is going to be really cheap. Albania and Bosnia are primarily Muslim, so keep that in mind. They're both allowed drinking. They're European Muslim, meaning they still enjoy life and they're not crazy. But something to keep in mind in terms of like there will be big cultural differences between the countries based on the religious background because that affects people a lot. Yeah, generally a good area though. A place worth at the very least traveling through. It's very kind of close, so you could do a couple months there and then see if you like one of the spots and consider setting up a home there. Sofia, Bulgaria is one last place I'll mention as a great city. I would vote for Prague over it as well if I have to give my opinion. To me, it was like a great city, and I've been to a bunch of cities like this where it's like I could see myself living here, like if Prague was blown up or something, or a few of the other cities that in Europe I would put ahead of it. But either way, this part of the world, if you're like a laid-back pace of life, a lot of wine, rakia, natural beauty, somewhere a little more unique without as many tourists or expats, low cost of living, then the Balkans are definitely worth checking out as a place to possibly live. So that is my off-the-cuff kind of overview of Europe. I'll probably do some more videos in the future that are specific on certain countries or areas, but that's kind of just what I would tell a friend. Like if we sat down for beer here in Prague, where it's very cheap if you remember that from the video, that's kind of what I would tell you, just to give you that overview of like what it's actually like to like in these different places, and then you could start to think of where you'd most fit in or what would be most interesting for you. I was going to say that you might already know where you want to live because we have these stereotypes in our heads, right? Of like people will always have wanted to live in Germany or Italy or that. Most expats I meet, or a lot of them, the place they live, they kind of always wanted to live from like a movie or something they read. And in a way that's cool, but the biggest takeaway for me in Europe is being totally wrong about my expectations and totally blown away by places that I didn't really know anything about. I didn't know much about Barcelona or Prague, which you probably do now, but you know, I didn't. And both cities that were just amazing that I love. So I had a lot of experiences where the places that everyone said was really good or I thought I would like, I didn't like that much. And then places that I wasn't sure about, I really like loved. So if you do have that feeling of like, I've always wanted to live in, say, Italy, go to Italy and do that. But if it's not what you expected, don't write off the rest of the continent. Try out a few more places, and I bet you'll find somewhere that's perfect for you. And that's it. Thanks for watching this video. If you've enjoyed it, if you put up with me this long, you might as well subscribe to the channel. Catch my other videos, which are primarily about helping you actually have the freedom to become location independent, an expat, live abroad, and have that freedom in terms of your life. And so with my other videos, I'm going to help you do that. Catch you in them.